The audio commentary. It's a dying art form, but here at One Track Mind, I, your wonky yet affable host Ryan Luis Rodriguez, analyze film through the prism of these embryonic forms of podcasting, one audio commentary at a time. Masterpieces, crapster pieces, live action, animation, cult classics, films literally no one has ever heard of. No track is too small, and no track is too big. Join me and my guests from the entertainment world as we keep these features alive every other Tuesday. Hey, who else is going to discuss Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey one week and Citizen Kane the next? Us, that's who. Sure, you have to put up with my voice, but there's a certain give and take in this industry. That's One Track Mind, part of the Someone's Favorite Productions family and available wherever you get your podcasts.
And welcome back to Film Foundations, the collaborative show between Weirding Way Media and Someone's Favorite Productions. I am your co-host, Ryan Verrill, from Someone's Favorite Productions.
And I'm your other host, Chris Dashy, from the Culture Cast. And because this is the visual medium for once, however, you will not be able to see the thing I have underneath my name, I will, in fact, swallow your soul! Swallow your soul! That was pretty good, right?
Not terrible at all. As usual on this show, we ask and answer 4 questions about a given topic that is surrounding either an actor, director, microgenre, or like today's possible topic, a franchise. And it's been a while since we've done a franchise, so I'm excited about this one. Today we are talking about Evil Dead. And as usual, our job is to entice you to broaden your horizons on film, to encourage you to travel down film tangents and side roads that you may never have traveled down before. But be careful, because the bridge is out, and you may not be able to make it back. Evil Dead is a big one for me. I know a big one for you. I am very curious to hear your history with the franchise. So how'd you first get into it, Chris?
Good question. I remember seeing the first one sometime in high school, and then I'm sure I saw the first one and the second one more or less back to back. And then, do you remember this service? This is a weird thing to bring up, but I always intrinsically associated with the Evil Dead franchise. Do you remember this thing that allowed you to trade DVDs with people through the mail? It was like I don't remember, but like you would be like, oh, I see that you have this, so I'll send you this, and I put my collection on there, and if somebody wants my thing, so it's like, you can get the things that you want, and you can also like trade away things. I don't remember what it was called, but I remember I did it. And it's, to get to the point of the story, I remember getting, I think at the time, however many versions of Evil Dead 3, which is Army of Darkness. I got like 2 or 3 versions of that through that, because that movie has God knows how many versions. I think, is it 3?
I think 3 different cuts.
3 different cuts, right.
Yep.
3 different cuts, 3 different endings, and one of them was harder to come by for a while than the other 2 were. And so I remember that, again, like Army of Darkness has a special place in my heart because of that. And then, we come to the more recent times, and we've got all kinds of Evil Dead stuff, because Evil Dead is now a brand. Not the way it used to be. Evil Dead used to be a brand, but it's like now it's like a merchandising thing.
Yeah.
And, they have Ash and everything. I mean, Ash is in Dead by Daylight, which is a computer game that you can play as either a killer or a survivor. They don't have any of the characters from Ash vs. Evil Dead in that game. However, they have an Ash vs. Evil Dead game as well. That is more or less an entire thing unto itself, based off the TV show that was wildly successful for the couple seasons it was on. I don't know, it's weird to be living in this kind of time and place where something like Evil Dead, which is, again, the first movie was, a student film effectively, and it was made in 1981, and we're still talking about it in 2024. And oh yeah, not only that, but a new one came out literally last year in 2023. It's, I don't know, this is in a lot of ways, like, and we haven't, like you said, done a lot of franchises, but the ones that we have done are more horror focused, because we've done this, we've done Scream as well. I'm not surprised that Scream is still kicking around, but I am surprised that Evil Dead is, because for me, Evil Dead, it never succeeded or failed because there was another one coming out. It was because those first 3 movies are so great. And I mean, again, I would say that 2 of them are amazing, and one, we'll get to it when we get to it. But that's my history with Evil Dead. I will also mention that I know you're going to bring it up as well. Evil Dead, the musical, is fucking amazing. Saw it in Las Vegas when I went there a couple years ago. And that's a thing that does not get enough love, but it's also a thing that I think if you're a fan of Evil Dead and you've never heard of it, seen it, or watched it, it's on YouTube. And the entire soundtrack is on Spotify. And there are some real bangers on that soundtrack. So that's my little Evil Dead aside. What about you, Mr. Verrill? Man with the Evil Dead 2 thing right over his left shoulder.
Yeah, I've got multiple Evil Dead things around the room right now. The funny thing for me is I came to Evil Dead very, very late compared to some other people that were around my age that loved this growing up. I have a really unique story about this, actually, because it was an odd time in my life because I was pretty embroiled in the music industry. I was hosting bands to come stay at my house when they needed it. I was helping with music videos. I've been in a couple music videos. I've done location scouting for a couple of videos. I did promotions for a radio station for a couple of years. I did all kinds of stuff surrounding this. And one of my favorite bands at the time is a very odd band to try to like recommend to people nowadays, but it's a very Christian band called Showbread, and they had a song on their big breakout album that was called Dead by Dawn. Mm-hmm. And I heard the song, and I had never seen Evil Dead, and the guys, it was an 8-piece band. They have 8 dudes in this band, and we're all sitting at the house, and we were talking about random things, and they wanted to watch a movie. And we started talking about some stuff that they were referring to in their things, and they were like, "So Evil Dead, where's that one? Maybe we can watch that one." I was like, "What's Evil Dead?" And they were like, "What's Evil Dead?" And they started going on this random rant and tried to teach me, like, "You love the song, but you don't even know what the references are." So I went and rectified that pretty much immediately. This will date it. I went to Circuit City and bought the DVD for Evil Dead, and I immediately went to capture them all. Of course, got the first 3, injected them straight into my eyeballs, and fell in love pretty quickly with the franchise as a whole. Just like you said, I don't love all of them equally. I think that I don't have the nostalgia for them that a lot of other people do, so I've got maybe some hot takes. But then growing from there, yeah, I paid attention through everything that Bruce was doing at the time. Sam had kind of slowed down starting after the Spider-Man stuff, of course, and then, when all the talks about, hey, let's rekindle some of this came up, I was super stoked. The reboot / remake / pseudo sequel, whatever, came out. And then the series came out. And, of course, the series came out right when my wife and I started having kids. And I've just never gotten around to watching it, unfortunately. Saw Evil Dead Rise in the theater last year. Needless to say, big fan of the franchise. I think it's great. I do agree that it's very different from Scream, where Scream continued because it made a shit ton of money. Evil Dead continued because it had a lot of outcries from fans that wanted it to continue. And on top of that, it did very well on home video. I mean, if you were into DVDs back in 2005, 2006, Anchor Bay put out countless editions of Evil Dead.
Sure did.
Let's put, 18 different cover variants on Evil Dead and make people feel like they want them all. And they were everywhere. Of course, some of the more famous editions for these movies were the Book of the Dead flesh-textured silicone crap that would disintegrate within like 6 months.
Sitting on my shelf right here, baby. It's still in good condition.
Yep. Unless you somehow kept them perfect, they would start to just crumble in your hands. And unfortunately, mine were some of the crumbling ones. So they are now gone from my home.
That's too bad. I do want to mention something, and you kind of unlocked a core memory, and it's really funny. I watched Evil Dead 1 for the same reason that you did, except the band wasn't in my house. I heard their song randomly, and I knew what it was in reference to, and I went and watched Evil Dead 1 and 2, which is a very weird thing to have you bring up, but I had to make sure it was the same song. I went and looked, and I recognized the album artwork. Like the guy being fed into the meat grinder, right?
I'm shocked right now that we're talking about Showbread and that you knew them. Not only that, I have a Showbread tattoo.
That's insane. I was
very close to this band. I've got. I mean, I don't know how much of a tangent we want to go off on real quick, but I will say the band stayed with me in my house in the middle of the desert in California. Years later, I moved to Kansas City in 2013, and when we found out that my wife was pregnant for the first time, I started looking for a new job, and I had been working in sales on the side. I was working for the government at the time, and one of these companies that I went to try to sell life insurance to was a plumbing company. And this guy was like, we don't want your insurance, but you're a damn good salesman. You want to come try to work for us? I was like, I mean, maybe. Show me what you got. So he took me on like a ride along with this plumbing company for 5 hours one day. And we're going back at the end of the day. And he goes, so everything's like, we're happy with you. We could bring you on board, but tell us more about yourself. Like, what do you like to do on the side? I was like, well, I'm super into music. He goes, oh, yeah. My house is real big on music. What do you like? And I was like, well, I've got a couple tattoos from some bands I love. Like this one here is called Showbread. And he goes, is this a joke? And I went, what do you mean? He goes, my son's the guitar player in Showbread. Random happenstance.
Wow. What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Insane. Yeah. Showbread is amazing. One of my favorite bands. I still listen to them all the damn time. Love that we just had that organic moment that came out of nowhere.
And here's the even funnier part. That is the only song of theirs that I've heard. That's it.
Amazing.
That's it.
Amazing.
It's that Evil Dead song. That's it. And actually, there was another thing. So it was actually two musical things. And here's the other one. The fucking music video for Everlong.
Yeah.
By Foo Fighters is Evil Dead adjacent, if not Evil Dead, essentially. Those were the two things. The Showbread thing was the first one, and then I saw the music video for Everlong, which is really funny because I have not thought about this in the longest time, but that put me kind of on the path to liking the kind of stuff I like now, because for the longest time, I didn't really... Is it weird to say, like, in my household, we didn't listen to music, but we kind of... I don't know how to explain it. Like, my mom played certain kinds of music for me growing up. Like, I remember being a baby in the bathtub and my mom playing the Thriller cassette while I was in the bathtub on like a little like kids cassette player thing. I remember that for whatever reason, but my like music choices didn't form until my teens, but like Foo Fighters was a very big part of that. And it was literally because of the random Evil Dead of Everlong, which came from, this random band that you love that I've only heard one of their songs, but you apparently have a tattoo on your body of. That's wild. That's a bit much, man.
Yeah, I've got tattoos for two different bands on my body, actually.
It's wild. It's crazy. So I know. I can't believe it in a way, but I totally can, because again, like when you were mentioning it, I was like, wait a second here. Like this sounds eerily familiar. God, I like that the band was at your house and you were like, I've never seen Evil Dead. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of embarrassing.
I mean, it's just it's funny. It's fucking hilarious.
That is like my origin story for film in general, though, is I've had multiple bands just straight teach me about movies that they love to watch when they're on tour. And I grew up in a small town in the middle of the desert. So we had a Blockbuster and we had like a little mom and pop video store, but even the mom and pop video store wouldn't survive if they were mostly renting out like the indies or the stuff that was underground.
Right.
So the only movies that we ever really had access to were the super mainstream things. We didn't have like, come watch Evil Dead 2 by this unknown filmmaker named Sam Raimi. Like that wasn't a thing for us.
That's fair. I mean, my parents were very militant about not letting me watch rated R movies until I got ways to just be like, I'm just going to get DVDs in the mail. Like, I'll just get DVDs in the mail. That's what I did. And I was like, I will just get these movies unbeknownst to them and watch rated R movies. Like, I remember getting into a huge fight with my parents because I wanted to go see, of all things, Kill Bill. And like, they got all bent out of shape. And I was like, it's just a fucking movie. Like, it's not going to turn me into some sort of sex pest. I mean,
and now look at what happened.
Right? I mean, it didn't. But my point being, like, I've always been one of those people that's like, just watch whatever the fuck you want, whenever the fuck you want. And you need to be the better judge, not the fucking MPAA. Thank you very much.
Right.
Off of my soapbox. I hate the MPAA. And I think, like, Evil Dead is a franchise that has kind of had battles with the MPAA to the point of, one of the movies was rated X, that being the second one. And then they were like, you got to make cuts. And it's like, this is stupid. This is fucking stupid. And the MPAA has always been stupid. Why? Because someone telling you what they think is just an opinion. And when opinions are being made into facts, and I guess not even facts, but a rubric with which to grade something by, I have lost all interest in having any conversation with that person. Because if you're trying to force movies into boxes, that's what we're actively trying to undo, which is the compartmentalization of genres so that people can watch movies and go, oh, this is just a movie. It's not a horror comedy. And by it being that genre, it automatically succeeds or fails based off of certain things. Like, I'm sorry. No. And Evil Dead, I think, is also a very good example of that, because I don't really know how to classify Evil Dead in a lot of ways as a franchise, because it kind of lives within several spaces kind of all at once.
Well, let's get into some of the actual history then, since we started dabbling a little bit there. All of this started with a short film that Sam Raimi did way back in 1978 with Bruce Campbell involved. It sort of was the inspiration that led into The Evil Dead, which was released in October of 1981. And again, like Chris said, this was pretty much a student film. And watching it now, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, man. But hey, it's a hell of a student film. It's like Dark Star, like hell of a student film. But if you guys had a budget, you'd be doing something real crazy. Cue Evil Dead 2 and Alien, right?
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, the Evil Dead comes out. It makes a splash with a lot of pretty important people who over the next 5 years start to explore it and discover it and share it. And some names that you will recognize start to be influenced by it. Cue Sam Raimi going, oh, suddenly I have people offering me money. I kind of want to do Evil Dead the right way of what I'd seen from the beginning. And that's where he comes in and makes Evil Dead 2, which releases in 1987 in March of all times. Really weird place to drop this film. But they go far away from that first film. And man, the second film is set up in such an odd way. We basically get a recap of the first movie, and then it turns into a madcap comedy horror.
Well, I don't know what to call it. It's Evil Dead 2, otherwise known as just Evil Dead Again, or like I don't that
or Dead by Dawn also.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like in my mind, I don't want to answer the question already, but this is a hard franchise to talk about because of the first two movies.
Yeah.
And everything subsequent to that is hard to talk about because, as we've kind of alluded to, Army of Darkness is not anything like the first two movies at all. And the second movie... It's not
anything like anything in the rest of the franchise.
No, it's like Ash versus Evil Dead.
Okay, well, this is my blind spot. Right. I haven't seen the show yet at all.
I will tell you that the show's tone is closer to Army of Darkness than it is even Evil Dead 2. But the thing is, the first movie is a straight horror movie.
Yep.
The second movie is a, like you've mentioned, I think, would you say horror comedy or comedy horror? I would say horror comedy.
Horror.
Really?
Comedy horror for this one, yeah.
See, I would say the third one is comedy horror. Army of Darkness. I would say that the second one is still horror comedy. It still leans heavy on the horror, more than the third one does.
Oh, clearly,
yeah. The third one is third one is something else entirely. What's weird is when Evil Dead comes back as a reboot, it is straight horror.
Yep.
Straight horror. Like, in a way that even the first movie wasn't. Like, the first movie is straight horror in a very late 70s, early 80s way. Evil Dead, the reboot, is, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's a lot. It being a lot is the reason it resonates so much with people. That's the choices that are made are such big, broad, interesting choices that I think that's why it succeeds in a way that most of the things that we've seen that are reboots of big tentpole horror franchises aren't, because it realized you couldn't just retread old ground. You have to do something new. Even if you just set it in a cabin, that is not enough to say I'm doing something different, and the new one's it does something different in a big way.
And not only does it do it different, I love bringing this one up in the conversation about the MPAA, primarily because Evil Dead 2 got cut and all kinds of attention from the MPAA, and then the reboot, there's a literal rainstorm of blood. Like, it is so far past any of the lines that they were remotely near in Evil Dead 2 that times have changed so much in the 26 years in between. It's, God, I love the reboot. We're going to be talking about all that later, of course. But so after that, we get the we were talking about Evil Dead 2. Again, nice, healthy block of time between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness comes out in 1993. A completely different world compared to what they had been releasing stuff in prior. And so Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell create a completely different film. This one is wild, set in mostly medieval times. There are skeleton deadites made with stop motion. There is mini Bruce Campbells. There is a lot of hilarity happening in this film. And it's, again, it's a pretty big movie that was made to really like excite the fans and keep this going, because without all of the groundswell of support coming after the first two films, I highly doubt that they would have been able to get to the point where they make a third film. That it's about a cabin in the middle of the woods, like getting haunted. How do you go to a third film? And then he said, well, let's travel back in time. Obviously continuing what we see at the very end of Evil Dead 2. And it brings some excitement to the franchise, but then it stops dead in its tracks for the longest time. Army of Darkness, though, how do you feel about that one overall?
I think it's a weird entry in the series. I mean, it's more of an action movie, it's more of a comedy than it is anything else. But it is also kind of more of action horror as opposed to a horror movie. I mean, I don't think that there's anything in the movie that's disturbing or upsetting in a way that, like, I don't know. I watched it recently and it doesn't feel pedestrian, but it kind of does. Like the movie's not scary. It's not a horror movie per se. It's more of like a action comedy or a comedy action movie. Again, there's a lot of comedy in the third one, and it being set in medieval times, I don't know. It kind of makes it seem. I don't know what it's a weird movie. I don't know how to explain the third one, because the third movie is such its own thing, and the way the third movie ends up leading into Ash versus Evil Dead. But I think for me, the third one it's one that I think of fondly, but I don't return to very often.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think this is the one I've probably seen the least out of all of them.
I think it's the one I've seen the most. Maybe that's why, maybe that's why I'm not so keen to revisit it, because I've watched it a lot. It was the one that resonated with me very early on, but I watched it too much at this point to be like, I've seen it a million times. What can I glean from it that's different?
Yeah. So after this, like I said, we go through a long period of nothing happening. Sam Raimi out, basically saying the world is my oyster. I'm going to make some major changes to cinema. He goes and makes some huge films. Obviously, he creates the standard for comic book movies during this time, and then helps to produce the reboot in April of 2013. That comes out directed by Fede Alvarez, and it's pretty great. Amongst Evil Dead fans, it's a little bit divisive. A lot of them miss the comedy aspect. A lot of them also love the direction that it went in. And then, again, another long break, and a decade later, literally in April again, we get our fifth installment of the franchise. Lee Cronin releases Evil Dead Rise. In between those two films, of course, we get the Ash vs. Evil Dead series, which ran for 3 seasons over on Starz, which I think if it was on any other network that people had better access to, it would have done a lot better for them.
That is the real problem. That is the real problem. Starz is like such a strange place to release things. But there are good shows on Starz. Ash vs. Evil Dead is one of them.
Fully agreed. And that's where we are at the moment. There is another Evil Dead film that has been announced that they're working on. We don't have a date for that one, but gosh, by the time this comes out, it might already have an announcement. So we'll see. They are working on another spinoff, and there's hopefully going to be something cool for Evil Dead fans soon, because Evil Dead Rise played like gangbusters. People loved it. I know that you've not seen it yet, but it was something that made a lot of people happy, which is funny because it did continue down the dark and very like horror centric reboot that we got. But also there's quite a bit of like random funny happenstances in it. It's not as comedy focused as the Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness, but it's got a little bit of comedy in it. But we'll be talking about that one a little bit, I'm sure. But man, I think that's probably a good primer before we jump into our questions. Anything else you want to highlight before we go out there?
I mean, the fact that Bruce Campbell is a well-known actor is because of Evil Dead.
100%.
We have Spider-Man because of Evil Dead, which is like a fucking bonkers statement to make. And you know what? I think, and again, talk about hot takes. Speaking of Marvel, because we always do, for no good reason, essentially. It's the running gag at this point that it comes up on nearly every episode. Those first 3 Spider-Man movies are pretty great. Even the third one, which is a protest piece by Mr. Raimi. Even the third one has some fun moments, and I still love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, but those movies are made by a horror director, and they are Sam Raimi movies, which I can't really say of a lot of the MCU stuff. Like, oh, that's a Joe Johnston film. No one says that about that first Avengers movie, or, first Avenger Captain America movie, because that was my biggest complaint when that movie came out. I was like, this should just been The Rocketeer with Chris Evans. It wasn't, though, because Marvel wasn't letting directors do their thing. And Sony allowed Sam Raimi to do his thing. I mean, there's a lot of Sam Raimi-isms in Spider-Man that if you are a fan of his, you will catch. If you are not, you will not catch them. One of those things being the constant inclusion of Bruce Campbell. Including, and here's the other thing to put a cap on the MCU stuff, Sam Raimi then directs a goddamn MCU movie anyways in 2022, which, to be fair, the less said about it, the better. Pretty much anything from this phase of Marvel has not been great. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is one of those things. Overpromises, underdelivers, but it has Bruce Campbell in it as Pizza Papa, which is literally like the weirdest character in that movie, selling pizza balls, which, if you're a fan of Eric Andre, has to be an intentional gag in terms of the pizza. But all of that to say, Sam Raimi is the director he is now because of The Evil Dead, the original movie. And you can trace a lot of the stuff in his other movies back to it because he is one of those directors. He always tries to include his isms in the movie that we expect. So I love Sam Raimi. I'm kind of disappointed we're not talking about Sam Raimi's whole thing, but to be fair, if you're going to talk about anything involving Sam Raimi, this is probably the most important thing to talk about.
We are eventually going to talk about Sam Raimi. I guarantee
I figured.
that. We're going to have to discuss Drag Me to Hell at some point, because, man, is that movie damn near perfect.
It's a good one.
Really, the last thing about Multiverse of Madness to say is one thing that I find hilarious is they went in that route seemingly because Taika Waititi had such an impact as a, quote, auteur in what he did with his entries into the MCU. But then Sam Raimi comes back and delivers a very Sam Raimi entry into the MCU, especially that third act. And it's not a wonderful movie, I will say that. However, I'm really glad that they actually allowed him to put some horror aspects in that final act. And not only Bruce Campbell, we get to see the Oldsmobile that's been in every single film as well from Sam Raimi. So
it's true.
It's all there, tons of references. But now let's get to it with our first question. So Chris, what is the foundational film that everybody should watch first? What is the best entry point for The Evil Dead?
So this is where the hot takes start, folks. For me, it's Evil Dead 2.
That's not a hot take. That's the answer.
I mean, so it's your answer too.
Yeah.
Look, it's not that I don't like The Evil Dead, the original film. It's just, what's the point in a lot of ways? Like, it's an important movie, but movies being important doesn't. Let me rephrase. How do I put this without making it sound like I'm being dismissive of the original film? We can applaud the original film for what it did in terms of getting Sam Raimi's ideas out into the world, getting his name out into the world, getting his vision of horror out into the world. But Evil Dead 2 is the movie the Evil Dead wanted to be. You can see that when you watch the movie. It's fairly obvious that all Evil Dead 2 is just the first movie with a budget. And you know what? If that were just if that's all Sam Raimi did was just do the original movie but with a budget, I don't think I would be picking it as the second movie being picked first, as opposed to the first movie being picked first. I don't think it would have been the case if he hadn't just remade the first movie. I think that was really a smart move on his part to requel the first movie, because I think the first movie's essentially been requeled out of existence, right? The first movie doesn't exist because the second movie exists. I know, and like what's weird is like the beginning of the second movie has them talking about the first movie, and it's like, no, just get to the goddamn new stuff. And the way the second movie ends, I mean, look, we don't have to worry about it now in 2024 or in the future whenever you hear this, but the second movie also ends on a pretty big cliffhanger too, which I really appreciate, because when I watched it the first time, I was like, wow, that did not do what I thought it was going to do at all. And also, in comparison to the original film's ending makes effectively no sense on top of everything else. It was just a decision made at the end to kind of put a button on it. But yeah. I as much as I appreciate, and I will concede that the original movie is obviously a very important movie, I believe it's is it not part of the film archives? Has it not been set aside? I believe it has.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, that in and of itself should say all you need to know about the level of importance of the movie is that it is now enshrined in an archive in the National Archives so that it will be available in the future, period, in its physical form. That is a level of importance that they don't just give to everything. But for me, the second movie just hits all the notes that the first movie hits, but it's the mastered version, to use a music term. It's remastered even, frankly. And, you know, I'm not saying people shouldn't listen to the pre-mastered versions of things, but is there a point, really, if you can just listen to it remastered? Look, you watch the first movie, you understand what Sam Raimi could do without a budget. You watch the second movie, you see what he wanted to do if he had a budget. And so that's where I come down on it. Like I said, you're in agreement with me. I'm sure that there are some people that are probably kicking their feet and stomping and saying, no, you're wrong. It's the first movie. Entitled to your opinion, but we all know that the second movie really is just the first movie all over again.
So I agree with you. Like I said, my choice is Evil Dead 2, but I'm actually choosing this one for a slightly different reason. I think to get a grasp of the entire franchise, you have to have both the horror and comedic aspects. And that's where Evil Dead 2 shows the film foundation for the entire franchise, because it has both parts in equals, like in spades. It does it very well. And one thing that we haven't said yet, if you're listening to this and you've never watched an Evil Dead movie, which is far more common than people think, we probably should state that this is literally just a cabin in the woods story. There's a group of friends led by Ash Williams, who is going to take his group of friends, including his girlfriend, on vacation in this cabin. He's rented it. He's driving there. They go over a bridge to get to this cabin. They're in the middle of nowhere. While they're in the cabin, they discover this random book. They open it up. They start reading the words from it. Turns out they've awakened some dead individuals because this is, or awakened the spirits because this is the Book of the Dead, called the Necronomicon. And as they do that, they discover that they're in for a pretty rough time at this cabin. And hijinks ensue. Some of their friends start to die. Some of their friends start to come back. There's stop motion in the first one. There's some hilarious blood gags in the second one. There's Ash Williams losing his absolute mind and seeing things come to life that aren't alive. It's a wild ride. So I chose the second one, like I said, because it has the horror aspect and the comedy aspect. Now, unlike you, I will say I do think there's a reason to watch the first movie, but we will talk about that when we get to the second question. But I do think that this is the best way to enter into the franchise and explore that if you like this, you'll probably like the rest of the Evil Dead franchise. And it's the best way to gauge that because it has everything. It's got Bruce Campbell at his most Bruce Campbell. It's got Sam Raimi with money. It's got the best cabin setting for maybe all the movies, but at least for that original trilogy. And it really is the one that got huge with like the cult fandom. Obviously, on the underground side, a lot of people love that first movie, but the second one is where it really grabbed a hold of everybody because the second one feels more like an 80s horror movie than the first one. The first one, it feels like a bit of a student film, unfortunately.
Well, and that's the other thing. You know, the first movie is also technically a requel of Within the Woods. Within the Woods' plot is the original Evil Dead, which is Evil Dead 2. So on top of everything else, you maybe even should watch Within the Woods too, as well, technically, given that the first movie is just a retelling of that student film, which is the reason they made the next movie, because the interest they got showing that, well, alongside Rocky Horror, I think. It's like 30 minutes. And it's essentially the plot. It's essentially the plot of Evil Dead. And then Evil Dead 2 is essentially the plot of Evil Dead 1. So it's all kind of being retreaded, but every time he's going a little further and going a little further because he has more gas in his tank, as, you know, financial gas in his tank, as it were. But I mean, I agree with you, obviously, but I think there will be people that are disappointed at us not picking the first one. And I completely understand why you would be, but the second one is just, I don't know. Like you said, there's an element of comedy in the series that the first movie does not have at all. And the first movie is played very straight, and the student film is played even straighter, frankly. And it's not that I don't like that, but I don't think that that's really indicative of the kinds of things Sam Raimi ends up bringing to what he does in the future, because the original Spider-Man is a fairly funny movie in a lot of ways. And look, Sam Raimi had a hand in writing that script, so there you go. And Evil Dead 2, I think, is closer in tone, like you mentioned, to everything that will come after than the first one is. The first one and the prequel film kind of stand alone with one other movie as like straight up horror movies, which is weird why the fourth movie is so divisive.
Yeah, fully agree there. And to speak on some of that divisiveness, let's go straight to the second question, which is, what is something that's not a great entry point for this franchise? One that if somebody were to watch it first might be a bit of a turnoff. And so we've alluded to the whole, differences between the first two. I'm going to throw out my answer is actually Army of Darkness. And I do want to throw out a caveat with that is I understand why some people would say the first one is the great entry point. But the reason why, I already explained why the second one was better, but it's not my answer here either, because I think it's a great entry point if you just want horror, and it really does serve that purpose. It's like many of the other great franchises that are out there where the first film and the second film are almost like polar opposite genres. This one, it blends it a little bit better, but, we've talked about Alien and Aliens before. Alien is a slasher film, and Aliens is a full-blown action epic. When you look at something more modern even, to go with the reboot of Evil Dead, Happy Death Day is a slasher film. Happy Death Day 2U is like this weird sci-fi, random horror elements thrown in sometimes film, but it's great. They're both great, just done in a very, very different way. And I think the one that I like in this one too the most is very similar time frame to these films, actually, is the Terminator franchise. The first one, just like Alien, is a slasher, and the sequel is an action epic, but it takes a lot of the ideas from that first one and evolves them. And when you look at Evil Dead, it does a lot of the same things. I love that first movie. It shows some of the innovative things that he did, like literally putting somebody on essentially a dolly and dragging them through the woods to get this random shot that he speeds up, and it looks great. It's fantastic. But Army of Darkness, it is the outlier in this franchise. And I think if you watch this and either you love it or hate it, that doesn't indicate what you're going to feel about the rest of the franchise at all, because it is so, so different.
I think there's a high chance you wouldn't like the TV show.
Yeah,
that's all I would say is if you don't like Army of Darkness, you're not going to like the TV show, because the TV show has, I want to say in the first episode of the TV show, they do a little like mini Bruce Campbell thing again, like from Army of Darkness. So like the DNA of Army of Darkness is really present in the TV show.
Interesting. That's
yeah.
I need to watch the show.
I mean, the show is good, but again, like the show is really kind of, it's like you said about the idea of Army of Darkness being an evolution of the ideas. Ash vs. Evil Dead is an evolution of the Army of Darkness' stuff, remixed kind of with some Evil Dead 2, but also some like original stuff, some kind of even further isms of what Sam Raimi is doing. I'm not surprised that this is your pick. I think that this is one of two right answers here. And I think that I fill in the second answer. I think maybe what you would think the second answer is. I think it's the second answer.
Yeah. Again, I don't hate Army of Darkness. It's just the one that I don't go back to as much as the others. I think it's really good, but also if this is the first one that you watch and two different scenarios. One, you love it and you're like, oh, this movie is hilarious. I want more of this. Let me throw on the movie that came on prior to this. Evil Dead 2 is not going to scratch that itch. If you watch this and hate it and be like, man, I've heard Evil Dead is so scary. Why is this movie just a bunch of tiny Bruce Campbells attacking somebody like in Gulliver's Travels? I hate this. And your response to that is going to be probably to not watch another Evil Dead film. And if that's the case, you're going to be missing out. So I love this movie. I do think it's great. I think it's surprisingly well made for when it was made and for who was involved. And, obviously it's indicative of what he could do in the rest of that decade with stuff like The Quick and the Dead and such. But, to me, this is just, this is the one that could turn people away specifically to this franchise.
I like your choice. So I'm curious what you will think of my choice. So my choice is, and again, maybe this is just me, and maybe this is me kind of being a little bit of a cheeky piece of shit, but I actually go with because again, like you said, theoretically should be saying the original Evil Dead. I'm actually going to say the 2013 film is my choice here. If you enjoy Evil Dead, the original movie, the second one, if you enjoy the original Evil Dead, you will probably like the 2013 remake. And if you like Evil Dead 2, you will also like the remake. But I think for me, it's a little bit of expectation readjustment with the 2013 one. The 2013 one is a very black horror film, black comedy horror film. It is not funny the way the second Evil Dead is. And the first Evil Dead is kind of funny the same way the 2013 film is. But the 2013 film, it for the most part is a horror movie straight through. I mean, and there's a lot of great imagery too that they really utilize. And Fede Alvarez, I mean, this is the movie, in my opinion, that is like his calling card for anything else he's worked on. I know some people would say Don't Breathe. I get it. I'm not as big of a fan of Don't Breathe as I am Evil Dead. But for me, the 2013 film is a reimagining of the original film, but done in a way that is more modern. And Evil Dead 2 is essentially just a reimagining of the first film, but more modern for when it came out. So Evil Dead as a franchise really has been about retreading old ground, but with new material, with new equipment, as it were. And I think Evil Dead 2013 is a good example of that because for the most part, it does follow the plot of the first movie. And the setup is pretty much the same. But I think Jane Levy is amazing. Obviously, she was perfectly cast. And there's some great kills. There's some great kind of directions that they go with some things you wouldn't expect, like making her a recovering drug addict, which is, I think, a very interesting way to have that character be situated in this story because, again, it gives the characters in the film a level of ambiguity as to, is this actually happening or is she just having a hard time quitting cold turkey? And I like that about the movie, that the movie gives even you, the audience, a little moment of like, what is actually going on here? And then the movie shows its hand, thankfully, and the hand it is literally Evil Dead, but with a female Ash is what it is. And you know what? I don't have any problem with gender swapping with Cass or any of that. I never have, because what's the point of getting upset about those kinds of things, especially when they're done well. And this is a very good example of gender swapping your main character. And I think Jane Levy makes a case for her character being I wouldn't say as iconic as Ash, but iconic in a different way, because they had talked about for the longest time bringing Ash and her character together in a sequel. And I still kind of think that they should. I'm still waiting for that movie to come out, the movie that has Bruce Campbell and Jane Levy and then whoever survives Evil Dead Rise. And I'm waiting for that, but this is a very good kind of stopgap, which is the original movie done with modern conventions by a director who clearly loves the original. And also, this is signed off on by Sam Raimi. And here's the thing. Sam Raimi signing off on stuff actually matters. He's not like James Cameron, who, the new Terminator movie is great. Don't lie, please. Or Dan Aykroyd. Ghostbusters 2016 is amazing. Don't lie, Dan. Please don't do it. And then on top of everything else, then just turning around and shitting on the movie once you're no longer contractually obligated to speak positively about it is a hell of a thing to do. But I don't know. Evil Dead 2013 for me is a movie that really stands alone for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is it's a remake of an original film that's pretty good in its own right. That I think makes a case for being as good, if not better, than the original, which is not something we really have a lot of examples of in cinema. Most of the time, sequels and third movies and fourth movies are seen as derivative. It's because for the most part, they have been. So that's my choice. How controversial is that? Is that a hot take?
I don't think it's a hot take because, again, this film is divisive. So I think about half the people would probably agree with you. I will say I think we should correct some minor language because Fede Alvarez has come out and said over and over and over again, this is technically not a remake. This is a continuation of the 1981 storyline. But it's important because if it was a remake, Ash and Mia being in the same film wouldn't make much sense.
Right.
But it's because it continues the storyline. I think that proves, and first off, they're adamant that it is the same storyline. They've said it over and over and over again. So based on that, make the movie, you cowards. Like we really want to see what the hell you could come up with to put these two not even against each other. Like what happens? Like that's just an intriguing idea. I want to see the movie.
Yeah, and to your point, like you said, like I was speaking of it as a remake in terms of the story. Like you mentioned, it is in the same universe, which is why that could happen. Ash shows up in the end of the movie in a post-credit scene for no reason. And then Ash shows up, best I can tell, in Evil Dead Rise again as a version of himself time displaced. Okay, fine. That's fine. To your point, like, make the fucking movie, guys, because Bruce Campbell's not going to be around for much longer, and neither is Sam Raimi. You only have a certain amount of time to do these kinds of things, so do it. I know we're getting another Evil Dead movie, but it's probably not going to be that. It's going to be something to answer the question as to where the third Necronomicon is, or what it has going on with it. And so, for me, the fact that, like you said, these are all connected is impressive. It's tenuous at best how they're connected, and it's never really been explained because how does Ash versus Evil Dead factor into any of this? Right. And that show goes back on itself after a while, best I can remember. So, yeah, it's weird that this is all in the same universe because, again, the original movie is from like 81. Nobody had that idea then. Come on.
It's true. Before we jump into our third question, I think we should cover a couple things. The first, we've hardly talked about Evil Dead Rise. There's a reason Chris hasn't seen it yet, but on top of that, I really want to throw a couple of plot points that are really great with this and not really spoil anything because I know quite a few people haven't seen it yet. But first off, this is the first movie that is not technically like there's no mention of a cabin at all. You're nowhere near a cabin. It is literally in an apartment building. In a big city that feels like LA. I don't remember if they refer to it as LA, but it's really well made. Like this movie had a lot of money behind it. Clearly, the way they handle that and tie it into the Evil Dead universe, I didn't like at first, but I've come around on it, and I think it's much better than I felt on day one, at least. The way that the Necronomicon just randomly shows up in an apartment building makes a lot of sense. I think the way that they handle the lore / mythology from this franchise is pretty well done. But once again, I really have to highlight one main thing, which is what we can highlight on literally every single one of these films, and that is in the entire Evil Dead franchise, no matter who you are looking at, every single film needs a lead actor that is nearly flawless. Bruce Campbell's handled it for most of the films. Jane Levy was incredible in the remake. She is, or reboot, whatever. She is literally like the high point in every single scene that she's in. And then we get to Evil Dead Rise. Now, this movie, it seemed to be for a lot of people doomed from Jump Street because it was supposed to only go to streaming on Max, and then it got some really positive reception. And so they said, well, let's try to put it in theaters. And so already it feels a little less than, like the creators were looking at it as less than. And this movie starts brutally. It is a pretty incredible beginning on this. And then you have, I got to mention it because people that watch this movie, this is one thing they will always bring up, probably the best title reveal screen in the last 30 years in any film. And then you get an incredible performance of our main character-ish, and that is Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie. And she is somebody that she dives in, just like Jane Levy. She is fully embodying this character like Bruce Campbell did. She is going there in weird body movements and over-the-top acting, which is needed when you're supposed to be this type of a character. She's remarkable in this, and I really hope that she gets more work simply because of that role. So it deserves to be at least stated and explained that Evil Dead Rise is a good movie, and people should see it.
I haven't not watched it for any specific reason. I just haven't gotten around to it.
That makes sense. Same thing with the TV show for me. But now, the other fun thing I want to do, and I'm going to have you go first since you haven't seen Evil Dead Rise, I would love to hear just your personal rankings, not like what is better or worst. What is favorite? So start with the fourth, like, quote, least favorite, even though you may still think it's a great movie, and make your way to the top.
I would say The Evil Dead, then interesting, because now I kind of contradict myself, but I think if you're asking me to rank them, I think I would probably go, again, leaving Evil Dead Rise off, the original Evil Dead 4, Army of Darkness third, only because I've seen it so many times, and then 2 is Fetty's Evil Dead, and then 1 is Evil Dead 2. That is a pretty fair ranking. How close is yours to mine? What's your 5? Because you can do 5.
So my number 5 is Evil Dead Rise.
Wow,
and
okay.
I don't think it's awful. I think it's just, first off, it's very new, and so I don't have the time spent with it. It could potentially bump number 4, which is Army of Darkness for me. And then number 3, I have that as The Evil Dead, 1981. Number 2, I have Evil Dead 2, and my favorite in this franchise by far is Fede Alvarez's. I think it's the best by a long shot.
Whoa, boy, that's the hot fucking take we're waiting for here. Fresh out of the oven.
Sure is. That's a.
I don't think it is a hot take though, really, because to your point, like me saying it as my number 2, you saying it as your number 1, like I don't think it's a hot take as much as just like 50% of people agree with you, 50% of people don't. Is that a hot take?
I think it's a hot take because so many millions of people worship Evil Dead 2 as like literally the pinnacle of 80s horror. And I don't have the nostalgia for that. And I don't have the nostalgia for Fede Alvarez's either, really. I just like it more as a movie. And I think that the storyline is a little more interesting and it's a better script. And, you know, Fede wrote it with his writing partner on this. And then Diablo Cody stepped in and revised a lot of the dialogue. So there's some really interesting people attached to this film. I just love the way they went. And I'm a big fan of the gore in that movie. I love that they went there. I mean, the fact that there's literal raining blood, that's awesome. Like, that's just fun to watch, period.
Yeah, like I said, I love that movie a lot. I get it. I think it's a fair choice. I could understand someone being kind of disappointed that neither one of us picked the original, but that's the reason we didn't pick the original, because there's not really a reason to right now. Not with Fetty's film, not with Evil Dead 2. I would like to mention something we didn't also talk about. There are a fair amount of Evil Dead video games, which is also kind of a thing. And one of them features... I know one of them features Sam Raimi or Ted Raimi as the voice of like a diminutive character that you like throw around. You know what I'm talking about. I think that's Hail to the King or Fistful of Boomstick. But like I mentioned, there was an Evil Dead game that came out 2 years ago. That's literally just the show in game form. So yeah, it's weird. Evil Dead is a brand. And that is a weird thing, right? Like, it's weird to me that Evil Dead is like a brand. And people be like, oh, I'm playing the Evil Dead video game. Or, you know, I don't know. It's so, or you're going to go buy Evil Dead toys at Target. Like, it's just kind of weird. I will never get over how weird it is.
Well, and one thing we probably should point out with buying this as a brand, Evil Dead is known for being on home video one of the most exploited franchises ever. Like, there have been countless releases of the first two movies for sure, and then Army of Darkness has gotten up there now at this point as well. But now beyond that, like, you can get all 5 of these movies on 4K UHD, on Blu-ray, on DVD. The ones that came out in the VHS era, there were plenty of those releases. There is a box set called the Groovy Collection, which has the first 2 films and all 3 seasons of Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I think Fede Alvarez's. I may be wrong about Fede Alvarez's film, but it's licensing for Army of Darkness has always been with a different company, so it's you won't really get a box set of all of those because they're money-wise they're unwilling to work together. But like Scream Factory, the boutique Blu-ray company, they've put out the Fede Alvarez one on 4K. They put out Army of Darkness on 4K. All the cuts are available on these releases. It's crazy. Like this franchise itself has gotten so many worldwide releases of their films that you could literally have a full wall dedicated just to Evil Dead physical media releases. Which
is nuts. I mean, again, that's just to speak on the third question apparently already. I mean, really, like, it's, well, let's do the third question, because I think my answer to what you just said, I think kind of fits into that third question.
Let's do it. As usual, third question, what is the biggest impact that the Evil Dead has had on pop culture?
I think existing as the Evil Dead is one of the answers, because again, it has such a long tail of things, because again, video games, there's comic book, there's a whole comic book thing. Let's not forget that Ash fights fucking Freddy Krueger and Jason in the comics. Yep. For real. Like, that's a thing that you could go read and should, because, oh yeah, by the way, not only does Ash show up, but so does Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Tommy from Friday the 13th, and they have to go and kill the president who's become a deadite or something. It's like, it is insane. But that for me is, I think, the thing that, look, saying it introduced the brand of Evil Dead into the world, I think is kind of an unfair answer, because duh. But I think for me, the actual answer is getting the world to acknowledge Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, because so many things that I love are inspired by the two of them and people's love for the original Evil Dead 1 and 2. Like you've mentioned, Showbread, Foo Fighters, those are bands, let alone all the other filmmakers and other content creators who are inspired by the Evil Dead. But I think for me, it's just giving Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell their entry point into the world of cinema and giving us two very distinct and unique talents in a way that, like, they've always been themselves, maybe to a fault, especially with Sam Raimi kind of always doing his thing, which I think after a while people are like, can you do anything else? And I'm not saying he can't, but again, like, Sam Raimi kind of got pigeonholed by what he made, similar to Bruce Campbell, but I think they've been able to navigate outside of it. And they've taken Evil Dead as a franchise back, and they're doing a good job at being, I think, stewards of Evil Dead, because they're producing the new films, they're helping writing. Bruce Campbell, they always want to know what Bruce Campbell's doing with the new films or how he's involved. So, I don't know, I think it's the introduction of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell into the world of cinema, because they've made a rather big impact on a lot of people. And these are two guys who, by the way, the funniest thing about all of it, they grew up together. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, I wish my childhood friend was Bruce Campbell. That would be weird. Like, and that's the thing. We're talking about it now. Like, in 10 years, they won't be like, oh, those guys were friends for 10 years. But it's crazy to think that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell grew up together, made a movie together, made another movie together, and now are intrinsically linked to one another forever. So that for me is my answer. I'm very curious kind of your thoughts on it and then what your answer is.
Well, first, I want to say I've always thought of Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi as the horror version of Scorsese and Bobby De Niro.
Yeah.
They all grew up together, made a bunch of movies, and lived their entire lives just kind of hanging out. And that's the dream. That's amazing.
Sure is.
So my answer is inherently the same as yours to this third question, but I want to get a little silly with it. And I got to say, like, the biggest impact on pop culture literally is the fact that the MCU exists because of Evil Dead. Without Evil Dead, we don't get Sam Raimi making Spider-Man, and we don't get modern comic book movies that are made the way that they are now. And it's hilarious to draw that line. And I know we've already talked about the MCU in this episode, but the truth of the matter is, like, without his first couple movies getting bigger and evolving with each one and seeing what he could do, and then eventually leading to what is the bridge in between Evil Dead and the MCU, which is literally The Quick and the Dead for Sam Raimi, I don't see another filmmaker that steps in when these are made and does it the way that he does to revolutionize those types of movies. I feel like we could have got there eventually, but he perfected it, which is such an interesting way to look at the guy that made fucking Evil Dead.
I know.
It is insane to think that without him, like, we wouldn't have Black Panther. We wouldn't have, the massive Avengers team up in 2019 that was such a huge hit for so many people.
Spider-Man No Way Home literally has the character from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in it. And that was the thing that people were excited for with that movie was, oh, look, Tobey Maguire's coming back. I mean, we were really all excited for Willem Dafoe. Let's not fucking lie here. That's what I'm getting Spider-Man come out to play. Like, I mean, Willem Dafoe. Like, let's just keep going with this. It introduced the world to Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. And I would even go as far as to say he introduced me to Willem Dafoe at the right age to be like, man, I like this actor. But you're right. Like, in a lot of ways, Sam Raimi kind of to thank for the MCU, thank or deride, and then he ends up actually being part of it, which is in and of itself kind of fucking nuts.
Yeah. When you're looking at, like, objective lists of the best comic book movies, it's crazy how many of them still list Spider-Man 2 as not, like, near the top, but literally the top, the pinnacle of comic book movies. People view Spider-Man 2 as the best one. And
I like the first one more still, sorry. I get why people like the second one so much, but the first one has the better villain. The first one has a villain. The second movie is like, oh, he's a reluctant villain, or he's being controlled by the arms. Like, I always had a problem with that because it kind of removes the stakes of the movie. It puts the emotional stakes on a different character, which is fine. But that first movie, just everything about that first movie has fucking James Franco in it, which is crazy. Like, that movie has James Franco, a very young James Franco, and a very young Willem Dafoe. Because, that movie came out in what, 2001? 2001 or 2002, because I was in sixth grade when that movie came out. I remember having a book that was talking, it was like one of those, like, from screen to film, or like from book to screen or whatever.
Spider-Man 1 was 2002, Spider-Man 2 was 2004.
It's wild. Absolutely wild. Yeah. We're still talking about, you put it best, those movies still show up on the top. In the top 15 movies for superhero characters ever made, you will undoubtedly have at least one Sam Raimi movie, if not two. Not going to be three, but you'll have at least two.
In 2024, after literally the last 16 years of the MCU coming into play, it's crazy that we still get those near the top. And it says a lot about the actual quality of those movies, because they held on to a little bit more of that 90s style of filmmaking where the set pieces felt like set pieces. It didn't feel like everything was green screen, even though, yes, there was some, but everything wasn't. And The special effects were a little bit better. There was more practical effects because Sam Raimi grew up in that. He pioneered some of that. He is somebody that could make a movie about a comic book character that you actually watch and feel, I don't know, the textures of. There's something about it that's more realistic. And when you compare it literally 1-to-1 with something like Multiverse of Madness, which is also Sam Raimi, it feels so much more fake when everything is digital and you can tell. It definitely hurts for those style of films. Sam Raimi is just incredible at filmmaking. And that's like the easiest way to say this.
Yeah, there is few American filmmakers who have done more without doing a lot than Sam Raimi. He has affected a lot by really, I mean, like, I'm not saying he's not prolific, but if you ask someone, name 10 American filmmakers of note, his name would not come up, and that is a shame because he deserves to be in the top 5 American filmmakers in terms of their impact on filmmaking in this country as a whole, especially genre filmmaking of a certain kind. But yeah, then to pivot into superhero movies, which are not what they used to be now, but for a while they were the biggest fucking thing. And one of those reasons is because, like you said, Sam Raimi paved the way, which is weird because he's not a superhero director. He's a director of horror movies for the most part, genre filmmaking, I would say broadly.
Well, let's get into our last question then. Well, maybe before we do that, one last thing. I know you mentioned it earlier, but I cannot stress enough to everybody out there listening. If you have not had the opportunity and it somehow comes around to your city again, please go see Evil Dead the Musical. I have had the chance to see it twice here in Kansas City. My wife and I got to sit in the splash zone both times. It is a lot of fun. The music is genuinely great. The comedy hits hard. It is very, very funny. It's very adult too. That's one of the funniest parts of it. The set pieces that they use on stage for it are always really well done. Lots of gags in it, and it's so fun. And if you like the franchise, there are so many running jokes that they do with everything just to make the audience in on it. It's so absolutely worth it. But like I said, you can watch it on YouTube. I think it was up at least a couple of years ago when I watched it. You can get the soundtrack on all of your digital music services. It's so good.
Yeah, I saw, like I mentioned, once in Vegas, and it's great. It's also one of the original ones of that kind of thing, a adaptation of a movie, a contemporary movie into a musical. I mean, you know, we have Beetlejuice the musical now, and everything's a musical now, but Evil Dead the musical was kind of early on. It was pretty off-Broadway, but it was kind of known for being off-Broadway. It was one of those like very popular underground things. But yeah, having the name Evil Dead, just the visibility goes up a couple notches, so.
It's super fun. Question number 4 then. What is the cinematic bridge to the Evil Dead, Chris? Maybe another franchise, maybe another movie, maybe another director that people, if they're already a fan of, might clue them in to watching a film from the Evil Dead franchise.
Yeah, so we've actually done an episode on this person already, so maybe there's a little bit of a cheat. But I would say, if you're a fan of Peter Jackson's early stuff, you're going to be a fan of most of the Evil Dead franchise, if not all of it. And maybe Evil Dead doesn't go far enough for you because Dead Alive, I think, is like Dead Alive is the third Evil Dead movie that never got made, right? Like Army of Darkness is its own thing, but imagine if Dead Alive was just, you know what I mean? Like Ash Goes Home, and it's Ash Goes Home, right? And then it's like, I mean, if you think about the story of Dead Alive, right? Like just, it kind of is like, what would happen if Ash got back to town and the evil followed him there?
Yeah.
And I mean, Peter Jackson, clearly inspired by Sam Raimi. I would also say, again, if you're a fan of Guillermo del Toro films, you'll probably be a fan of the Evil Dead franchise. But I mean, again, that's two filmmakers, so I'm curious what your answer is. I hope it's a little bit more esoteric than mine, because mine is a little like, duh. I guess I could have said the films of Fede Alvarez even, but like that's a little unfair. But Del Toro and Peter Jackson are very good facsimiles. I mean, I wouldn't say Edgar Wright, because he's really never done genre filmmaking of the horror variety. I guess he did with One Night in Soho, but that wasn't sustained like Del Toro has done, like Peter Jackson has done, because Peter Jackson did like 3 horror movies in a row. Del Toro did a bunch, both Spanish language and English.
And produced a bunch too.
Yeah. So that's my answer. What do you think, and what's yours?
I think those are good choices. I think Edgar Wright is. I wish he would just make a straight horror movie. That would be like what we all want. And Last Night in Soho, it was marketed as that. It never was that, unfortunately. And now he's remaking Running Man.
Weird, right?
Yeah. What is this world? Anyways, my answer. I tried to really go 1-to-1 with this and come up with another franchise that would work. And so. A lot of people won't agree because it's nowhere near as consistent as the Evil Dead franchise. But I'm going to throw out there, if you are a fan of the high points of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, you'll probably like a lot of the stuff from the Evil Dead. Because Sam Raimi and Tobe Hooper both making very important movies in, obviously Texas Chainsaws in the earlier part of the 70s. And then Sam Raimi started getting this idea near the end of the 70s and didn't come out until 81. There's so much like baked in with the Vietnam War and the sensibility of coming out of like the hippie age and into the 70s, which was this time of freedom and liberation for a lot of people. And so they come out with this very like horrifying first film. And then the second film comes in and it's this wild genre change. And for both of these movies, there's something that still have a lot of horror elements, but are also funny as fuck. And then, unfortunately, there's quite a few missteps in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Then the remake comes in, and it's a brutal retelling that is very much like the first. That is a really well done remake. And
thank you, thank you for defending that movie because I know it takes a lot of shit. I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's
remake.
Incredible. Yeah. Jessica Biel is amazing in that.
Yes, Arlie Ermy, holy shit.
Yeah,
and the guy who plays Leatherface, he's great, and he's physically imposing too, which like really physically imposing.
And then, of course, with Texas Chainsaw, that also leads up to the streaming age Netflix film that came out that a lot of people hate, but I think that it had a lot of really good elements into it. I don't think it's far from a perfect film, but I think
it's produced by. And it's produced by Fede Alvarez.
Yes. So he's got a hand in it. And beyond that, it ties so much in with that first film that it's just a modern take on continuing that original story. You get a character that comes back, which is the big, hot new thing to do. But beyond all that, it's very almost like 1-to-1 with the Evil Dead franchise. It just fails to live up to the quality as often as Evil Dead does. I'm a big fan of many of the Texas Chainsaw films, and especially a big fan of Tobe Hooper and the way that he, kind of like Sam Raimi, he made that first movie and then came back for a sequel because it was so important. And he went a slightly different route, but it was more of like a, fuck you. If you love that first one, man, you're going to think this is weird. And just goes all out for that second film. And it's one that if you've not... I can't. That's maybe what I should say here is I can't wait until we can do an episode on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
Yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat, motherfucker, as Bill Moseley would say. Bill Moseley, second Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, so good. And I think I would agree. That's a very apt comparison. The high points in Evil Dead are way higher and way more consistent too. To your point. And I would actually say, I think across the board with Evil Dead, all the way down, Evil Dead is a consistent franchise.
Extremely.
First one's consistent, second one is, third one is, fourth one is. From all accounts, the fifth one is as well. So look, we're not going to compare it to Hellraiser. Let's just put it that way. Like, we're just not going to for a whole host of reasons. Hellraiser is one of those franchises that, speaking of things I can't wait to talk about, because that is a franchise that is disjointed, to say the least. And that's that's the underest of understatements being made on this podcast is Hellraiser is an inconsistent franchise. Hellraiser is a franchise that effectively has 2 good movies, 3 if you're a fan of
2.5.
Yeah, okay. I like that third movie, but I'm not going to sit here and call it, a peak cinema moment. But it is pretty funny when that guy has a camera jammed in his face. The guy with the CDs in his head is just as 80s and 90s as it gets, but I love it.
Yeah. Man, Hellraiser. If we ever do an episode on Hellraiser, that's going to be a wild one.
Yeah, because there will literally be like, we can't in good conscience suggest half of these movies.
Let's discuss Deader for the next 40 minutes.
Yeah, right?
Anyways, that is the Evil Dead. 5 films, 3 TV seasons, a bunch of video games, a musical. and a lasting impact on horror, on comedy, on comic book movies, and on the world. I mean, you see at horror conventions every year, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell still going out and shaking hands with fans with some of the longest lines at any of these conventions just to make people happy. I went to Texas Frightmare in 2019, and the Evil Dead car was there to take the picture with. Like, it's still that big of a deal.
I'm glad that you brought this up, because my button on this is I got to meet Bruce Campbell at one of those things, and I took my picture with him, and it is a very funny picture. I don't think I've ever showed you the picture, but he was wearing a pink dress shirt and a white jacket. It was just like, what in God's name? And he was like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, why are you asking me this, Bruce Campbell of all people? But it was the weirdest thing, and my reaction is pretty good too. But he is. I mean, again, he was as nice as I assumed he would be.
It sounds like he was there on a weekend during filming Burn Notice.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Boy, I forgot about that, right? Like, he was on that show for, 10 seasons or whatever nonsense it was? Yeah. Bruce Campbell he's the man for a reason. Bubba Hotep, baby. Like, come on. I mean, Bruce Campbell's amazing. That's the big takeaway here. Like, everybody involved with this franchise, pretty amazing.
Maybe my hottest take as we sign out here, I can't stand Bubba Hotep.
I get it. The last time I watched it, it was just fine. It didn't hold up as well as I remembered. But, was that a Don Coscarelli movie?
Sure is.
Yeah, yeah. Not all Don Coscarelli movies are created equal.
Nope, that is accurate.
No.
All right, Chris, let's go out with a bang. Anything you want to clue people in on before we leave?
Just head on over to weirdingwaymedia.com to pick up and listen to anything that I work on and things that I don't, like Twisted and Uncorked, the award-winning 80s TV Ladies, the Projection Booth, Fermentaries. I could keep going, but you should just go on over to weirdingwaymedia.com, find something you like in all those 20 podcasts, give it a listen, and if you like it, like, rate, and review whatever show that is, be it this one or some other one, on iTunes, because that's where it helps us out the most. What about you, Ryan Verrill, the busiest man in physical media?
I will highlight a show that's on my podcast network, Unsung Horrors. And if you like Evil Dead or like listening to this episode, I'm going to tell you to give a shot to Unsung Horrors, because they have one of the greatest premises in podcast history, which is they take a horror film that has less than 1,000 views on Letterboxd and break it down, watch it, go over it. They get you hyped up on it. And usually they do it with a fun guest or just the two hosts, Lance and Erica, who are really great at what they do. Every October, they have something called Horror Gives Back, where they run a charity drive to be able to donate to some animal. I don't even remember what it's called. I will. I think it's called Best Friends. It's a organization that helps with maintaining shelters and doing what they can to help donate for animals, and they're just great people, and they put on a good show. But other than that, I will say we hope you come back for the next episode. We hope that you continue to push the boundaries of your interest in film, and in light of the Evil Dead, stay groovy.
Hello, this is Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those that don't know us, Adam, Zach, and we built a podcast over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from 3 very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. We started with Dev Crocodile, but over time we've been lucky enough to speak with Arrow Video, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, Radiance, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us wherever you podcast, and also actually recently as part of Someone's Favorite Production Podcast Network. We hope to see you online.